The UConn bench can beat any team in the Big East.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one sports podcast network, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here with Golden State Valkyries radio analyst Sophia Jones. I'm Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. And here's what we are getting into today. So some more updates on the WNBA CBA. They're in that status quo period right now. We'll get into it a little bit more later on. Big night for the Washington Huskies. Some fun double overtime games. But first, we have to get into UConn and just the absolute belt they are applying to these Big East teams. They won last night 97-39 over Xavier. And that's honestly the main storyline right there, is the fact that, Sophia, we kind of talked about this. Having to, being a student athlete is already hard enough. Having to go up against UConn, traveling to UConn, having UConn come to you, any of the circumstances, and you're a Division I athlete putting up 39 points. It's just tough. UConn is just so difficult to try and face up against.
They create such a competitive environment in stores. Also, just on a Wednesday night, they filled out 10,000 plus in their arena. But like your cold open, UConn's depth is just another thing that is not to be played around with, because you see the starting five, such incredibly high top end talent, but then everyone that's coming off the bench is equally as impressive. And there's just no let off when it comes to UConn. As an opponent, you barely have a time to breathe, whether that's offense or defense.
Yes, suffocating on both ends of the court. So you have to be prepared. But a big night for the bench, which I mentioned in Allie Ziebell. She had a UConn program record tying 10 3-pointers and a career high 34 points. That program record of 10 3-pointers is held by other players like Maya Moore and Katie Lou Samuelson. So she's up there with some very significant UConn names. But I thought it was very sweet. Post-game, Coach Ariema said that, the number in terms of the numbers that she had put up isn't the only impressive part to him in that game. It's just watching her play with so much confidence. That's the Allie I saw play in high school. That's the Allie I saw play every summer. That's the kid we recruited and why we recruited her. So, obviously we've seen their on-court product, but I think so much of that stems of just how connected this UConn program is, and just the love from the coaching staff to the players themselves. It all just translates so well. And when you have your bench coming in and literally breaking records as the most bench points ever scored, it's because it's more than just the basketball aspect of things. You are speaking so much confidence into these players that no matter when their number is called, they are ready and can go out there and showcase exactly what UConn basketball is.
Yeah, I think Geno, more than any other year I've seen in recent times, he really seems very joyful and relaxed this season. He's a lot more smiley than usual, but he has a very good reason to be, because his team is so talented. And it's so talented, starting five, bench. Even in this last game, there was no Sarah Williams, so you're missing her, but that really didn't show its effects at all. Also missing Blanca Quiñonez, but that didn't really show its effect either, because they're so deep. But they're deep also in the ages that they have on the team. So seniors or even grad students all the way down to freshmen, it's extremely heavy.
Yeah. And this is how you're goated. So AZ Fudd didn't have the best shooting night. Nobody come for me. She was 2 of 12 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3-point line. And you're such an efficient and elite scorer when people are starting to question why you're not making shots in one game, right? Mind you, she isn't really necessary in a game like this. They only allowed 39 points. You're blowing out this Big East team right now. But Coach Ariema afterwards said that she was just having a difficult night. She wasn't 100% all there. There could be other extenuating circumstances as to why she wasn't having her greatest shooting night. But the fact that there are different articles created about her as to why AZ Fudd went 1 of 7 from 3, knowing how elite she is at scoring. And I think she did kind of break a record that she had going. But that's how you know that this UConn team is likely one of the best teams that we have seen from the program. And that is saying a lot considering everybody that has come out of UConn and has been one of the greatest basketball players to ever touch a court.
Yeah, for AZ, off nights happen. It's just a matter of how you bounce back. UConn, they have a really great chance to do so and showcase that when they host Tennessee on Sunday. So that will be a great opportunity for a player like AZ Fudd to have a bounce back game. But like you mentioned, UConn, they're just rolling so much right now. And to be such a cemented number 1 seed also when this year of women's basketball is also really deep, just goes to show how strong they are.
They're going to need her, like you said, on Sunday against number 15 Tennessee. Love when they sneak these games in there during their conference play. And then Xavier will host Butler on Sunday. But another big one, Illinois went up against number 2 UCLA. UCLA came out on top, 80-67. Lauren Betts, despite having some foul trouble early, had 23 points, 9 rebounds, nearly a double-double. But then you have her sister who comes in as well with 10 points and 6 rebounds. It has to be unfair to have 2 Betts siblings that are 6'4", 6'5" plus and have them on the same team. You're seeing double at that point, and they're both putting up double-doubles on you, essentially, almost.
Yeah, in that first half, Lauren Betts, she was in foul trouble. She picked up 3 fouls in like the first 5 minutes of her play. But then you get another Betts, her sister, and she comes in and scores 10 points all in that first half to pick up a little bit of the slack. She ended up playing a lot of minutes throughout the rest of the game. But she is contributing to what UCLA is now turning into a pretty deep team as well. But Illinois gave them a little bit of a run for their money that game. At halftime, it looked like the Bruins were going to do their signature pull away in the second half, but Illinois came back fighting. They showed so much effort. They were really physical. And because Lauren Betts, I think she didn't play much in the first half. In the second, they ran a lot of the offense through her to try to get her the looks. But then that's when the Bruins fell back into a little bit of the predictability that sometimes we've seen with their offense in the years past, where it's just you're getting one look. It's not as guard dominant as we've seen them being. And that's how I think Illinois came back a little bit. It was still a 13-point win for UCLA, but because of how much they've been blowing out opponents, it felt a lot closer than what we're used to seeing.
You're right. It did feel way more competitive because we're used to them having a minimum of a 20-point blowout in this conference so far. So 13 points meant you put up a good game against UCLA, considering how they are playing. But they shot 85% from the free throw line. They were able to get themselves there quite a bit because they were dominating inside of the paint. They had 48 points in the paint, and they also dominated on the boards 39-25. So when you have 2 6-foot plus on your team, and your guards are all big too, Illinois put up as much as a fight as they could against UCLA. Illinois still looking really strong in this conference, but it's just a tough team to go up against. But really excited to see what this team will look like against Iowa on Sunday. UCLA number 2 goes up against number 8 Iowa on Sunday. That's going to be a fun one. And then Illinois will have to play another ranked opponent in number 25 Washington on Sunday as well. We'll get into Washington's game against Maryland. They're in double overtime right after this. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. If you're someone like me, I'm still learning the ins and outs of taxes, if you will. So it's very helpful when somebody can come in and kind of take that stress off of me. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club, where you can get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Women's Basketball, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Go to lockedonwomen'sbasketball.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more, because why wouldn't you want to hear more from me and Sophia every day? So tap into our Everydayer Club. Okay, some more recaps from the Big Ten. This was an exciting one, went into double overtime. The overtimes might have dragged a little bit, but still a fun one nonetheless. Number 25, Washington went up against number 16, Maryland, and they came out on top 83-80. Sellers led the way for Washington with 38 points, and she was really, really significant in having those overtime stretches.
She was outstanding to watch during those stretches. When it got to the overtimes, even the end of the fourth quarter, she was the one that had the ball in her hands for the Huskies. And it was one of those things where the ball is going to her, how she's going to try to score. And she still did it anyway. It was really incredible to watch. I think no one wanted to win the game more than her at the end, but just a really tremendous performance to will the Washington Huskies to that win, because throughout the game, it was going to be more of a defense battle for them. And so I thought they did a good job doing a lot of switching, preventing some downhill drives by Maryland, who prefers to play with more pace and space in the open floor. So they were in the game because of their defense after it looked like Maryland was going to seal it and they were leading the majority of the game. But they did just enough on offense to get the win. I actually felt like Maryland might have been the more refined team in the end, but Washington was a more gritty.
And that's what it kind of comes down to in some of these games as well. You can have the most polished team, especially within this conference. You can have the most polished team. You can be executing basically on all cylinders. And like you mentioned, I think Maryland was honestly doing pretty well executing, and they looked like the more poised team coming out of it. But when you have that will to win, that's the differentiator. I think we've seen it in the SEC. That's what Coach Dawn Staley said. If you have that will to win and you have that grit and grind to fight to the final buzzer, you are the team that is going to win in some of these really competitive conferences. I think that's what we saw in this Washington and Maryland game. Washington also forced 14 Maryland turnovers, 9 of which were steals. So I think that was also kind of part of the run where Washington has had that defensive identity, especially playing at home, that kind of rushed Maryland at times, or just put them in difficult positions, especially when we're thinking of that late game stretch. And truthfully, once it hits overtime, you can kind of tell which team is going to win by the time overtime even starts. And you could tell Washington was ready to get the game done.
Yeah. And for Maryland down the stretch, specifically for Garzon and Poffenbarger, they had a lot of chances to win the game for Maryland, but it almost looked like they were in their own heads a little bit too much. And I think that they were missing a lot of key shots down the stretch. Addie Mack was great. The freshman, she it was her and Sellers kind of going back and forth for a little bit of the period. She kind of kept Maryland in those overtime periods. But like you mentioned, just with Maryland, they got good looks, but just couldn't finish. And I think that's when the mental factor started to come into play. And Washington was just the more resilient team.
The Terrapins will go on to host Oregon on Saturday, and then the Huskies will return to Seattle for a home game against Illinois on Sunday. But let's switch topics over to the Big 12. Iowa State having a pretty significant win. Texas Tech, I don't really like saying teams are falling off, but they're having a little bit of a tough run in the conference right now, maybe a little bit similar to Iowa State really starting off hot, having some of these conference losses. But they defeat Texas Tech 84-70. No surprise here that Audie Crooks had 33 points and 12 rebounds. She made all her free throws as well. She was 7 of 7. Jada Williams coming in with 15 points and 9 assists. They are one of the most efficient assisting teams in the nation. A majority of their points come off assists. And I think this has just been one of the best transfers possible for Jada Williams. I think she was such an exciting recruit coming out of high school. We saw her at Arizona. She did well, but it wasn't the level that we knew she could be at. I think being at Iowa State, I know her and Audie Crooks were just a keying at the beginning of the season, just being like, it's going to be us two. We're going to get this thing rolling.
Definitely. And for Jada Williams, she kind of was a high school recruit that had the flashiness to her game. I think she was seen more so as a scorer. Mm-hmm. But at Iowa State, she's embraced that role to be a facilitator. She's averaging 7.7 assists, which is really incredible. Also 14 points. So she's really rounding out her game. And what better way to round out your game and rack up those assists when you have Audie Crooks sitting in the paint, getting that single coverage and just turning everything into a bucket. I think for Audie, it was a good, I don't even want to say bounce back game because she's consistently been putting up big numbers, but 33 points and 12 rebounds is that really dominant, more so non-conference form or beginning of conference form that we're used to seeing her. And Iowa State, this was a much needed win against a quality opponent. They were on that 5-game losing streak. Now they won the last 3, this last one specifically coming up against a ranked opponent. So you can tell that they're getting their mojo back a little bit. They got Texas Tech into a lot of foul trouble because Audie Crooks was so unguardable. Their front court, or Texas Tech's front court depth, was really struggling against that because someone would come in and just pick up a foul immediately. But it was just a lot to do with the way that Iowa State forced them into those predicaments.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think part of it, like you were saying, comes from Jada Williams just having such fantastic court vision and understanding. She's always kind of understanding what that next play, what that next move is going to look like. So she has a high basketball IQ too, understanding how her team moves as a whole, obviously feeding Audie Crooks quite a bit. I think Texas Tech just didn't really have anybody to match the size and intensity down low that Audie Crooks presents, no matter how many people you throw at her, but especially I feel like she did have a good amount of those one-on-one actions where if you put her in a situation like that, she's going to get a bucket. She has such a soft touch around the rim. She totaled her 2,000th point, while Jada Williams notched her 1,000th career point. I hate having to say those numbers, but Crooks did it in just 89 games, and she is the 4th Cyclone to hit that number. So a really strong tandem by these two.
Definitely. And it's the players around them also. I keep bringing up the return of Ariana Jackson, who was out for a little bit because of injury, but it's the players around that allow those two specifically to really thrive and be the main generators of the offense.
Absolutely. Iowa State will return home to play UCF on Saturday, and then Texas Tech will have to host number 12 TCU on Sunday. That will be another tough opponent to have to go up against in the Big 12. coming up after this, there's been some more updates within the CBA and where we're at with those negotiations right now.
Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track down every single transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. And it feels like these days, almost everything is either a subscription or a paywall. Even to watch some of these games that we mentioned, it's Big Ten Plus, which you have to pay for, ESPN Plus. So there are so many subscriptions that you have to keep up with. And Rocket Money makes it easy to recognize where your money is going to. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on.
The WNBA season is coming up very, very soon, just over 100 days, starting on May 8th. And there's still quite the laundry list of things to do in terms of the CBA, in terms of just getting the season started in general. And a couple of those things being, one, the expansion draft. Obviously, 2 teams are being added to the WNBA this season. And they are also kind of kicking things off in terms of the schedule. So getting their roster together is going to be a main priority. There's more than 100 unrestricted free agents that still need to sign contracts. Literally the entire WNBA could be on a different team this season. And then also we have to incorporate these 2026 drafts. The rookies that are coming in, that are coming off of these really fantastic season so far. I mean, this has been such a fun college basketball, women's basketball slate so far, seeing how they perform in March Madness. Then after that, getting drafted and being sent to your team essentially right away. So you can do training camp and you can start with everybody else in May. There's still a lot to be done. Sophia, what else do we need to know about what we can expect from the CBA right now and kind of what the status quo period is looking like?
Yeah, so the status quo period is essentially the current CBA is still in effect. Neither side has agreed to a work stoppage. So the players aren't striking. The league isn't holding a lockout. They're just in this period where there's also no extensions, which is different from the last CBA where we saw these extensions. But this stalemate is just continuing. Our most recent update is that the WNBA Players Association is waiting on an official response from the league since sending a proposal around a month ago. But the league believes that the proposal didn't even warrant a response because it wasn't that different from the past ones that the union has submitted. So instead, they're waiting for the players to submit what would consider a more quote unquote realistic proposal. So that is where we're currently at with some of these updates, where there's just not even dialogue right now, which is a little bit concerning. But a lot of people have been saying that there's an understanding the only way to find a resolution is through compromise. That is what negotiations are centering around, and for agreements. But right now, it sounds like the players are feeling like they're not being heard by the league. They're waiting for this response that has not come yet.
And that brings a certain level of concern, obviously. And there was a certain level of predictability when it came to that, especially as we're getting closer to the season. NCAA is obviously in full swing and has been also unrivaled happening. There's a lot to be done in other facets of basketball right now. And I think that might be distracting from the point a little bit. That's something Breanna Stewart had mentioned in terms of their negotiations. She felt that she wants to be in the room talking about the real stuff happening. These meetings get so sidetracked by language, verbiage, and context. We're missing the point. And that's where seems to be keeping the hold up when it comes to all of this is the players still don't feel fully heard. And I think we've heard a lot from the players now, and we've heard little response from the league in these past couple of weeks since this status quo period. So I'm very curious to see what the league may do as a response, or if they're just going to go strictly based off action right now, because they released the schedule when that was kind of unpredicted as well, but there hasn't been much else said about it.
Yeah, and for Breanna Stewart, though, she mentioned just wanting to have everyone in a room together talking about these things, and just mentioning that the language, verbiage, and context can be skewed when you're constantly going through third parties like lawyers. And my parents always told me that I would make a good lawyer because I know how to beat around the bush sometimes, which is, some of these both parties could potentially be doing a little bit, which is why Breanna Stewart just wants to get in a room and sit down and talk with everyone, because reestablishing trust is another huge reason or another huge emphasis that they're trying to get done during these negotiations. We saw those tensions really rise when Nafisa Collier made those statements towards Kathy Engelbert before the WNBA finals. But again, some of the main holdups are still coming to a mutual understanding on the revenue sharing. The league has proposed a system where players would receive an average of 70% of net revenue over the lifetime of the agreement, while the players have proposed receiving 30% of gross revenue. And so they're looking at what is considered revenue as well, where the league looking at net revenue, which is defined as revenue after deducting expenses, whereas gross revenue, which is what the players want, they want it before deducting expenses. They believe that they don't want to get paid after everyone. So even though that 70% looks like more, it's really not, because you're deducting a lot of costs before them. Another issue is finding a middle ground on housing. The league thinks that raising salaries will eliminate an extra cost for the franchises. However, the players think that housing is a priority, especially for non-guaranteed contracts and international players.
Yeah, we will hope to see all of that come to terms soon. Hopefully we can have some flights from New York to Miami so everybody can meet in one room, make Breanna Stewart happy and all the other players. And hopefully we can get the ball rolling on expansion draft, free agency, all that stuff. But thank you for tuning in today to Locked On Women's Basketball. Come back tomorrow where we recap some more college games and what to look out for this upcoming weekend. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Women's Basketball so you get all the latest episodes. Find us on Instagram at Kalia Butler _ and Sophia Jones with 3 S's and a 2. And never miss an episode with the Everydayer Club that is built for you. Get Locked On Women's Basketball ad-free, plus members only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwomen'sbasketball.supercast.com to join the club, and we will see you all again tomorrow.